Hi, this is Roger Green, host of the Surfing the NASH Tsunami podcast. This week, we are offering 4 conversations around the general topic of cirrhosis treatment and drug development. After a stimulating conversation about the importance of bringing drugs to cirrhosis patients and the ways that this process can speed general adoption of non-invasive testing, the group reserves its last several minutes of the podcast for this conversation, considering the roles that different types of stakeholders can play in driving the vision forward. Listen to see what ideas it stimulates for you personally to get involved in this challenge, because it matters. This episode is full of big thoughts and, to use an old-fashioned phrase, has the potential to shift the paradigm on NASH drug development. So sit back, listen, enjoy, learn, and when you're done, join the discussion on our LinkedIn and Facebook discussion groups.
Roger Green.
Stephen, I do have one more question that goes along that. When you say society is a conservative, then that might slow down the pace at which data would be integrated, which means you'd have to speed up the pace at which it's developed if you're going to get more data into the system, regardless of page or how you're going to enter it.
Stephen Harrison.
Yeah, let me just mention that. We're at the point where we need a disruptive technology. We need something that can come in and say, look at all these thousands of patients that have been studied. How do we collectively bring those to bear? That's one of the things Jörn and I have talked about, Mazen, Nareedin, Naeem Al-Khoury, and others, that we can potentially do through our Summit network, where we actually are enrolling many of these clinical trials. And if we're able to combine, say, the Screenfeld data, the placebo data, or these NITs at baseline and correlate those to liver biopsies, all these things we can do if we're able to get pharma to link together, look at this de-identified data cross-sectionally and mine that. I think we could answer a lot of these questions and advance the needle forward much more quickly. And then doing that in connection with the FDA and the biomarker qualification program and AI digital pathology. All those stakeholders are critically important in doing this, but we've always kind of fallen back to our standard approach to advancing science. And that is, maybe we let our societies take the lead and maybe we just wait for the next major Congress before we pull together an advisory board to look at something. We don't have to wait for the next EASL or the next AASLD or the next emerging topic conference where we actually bring together key stakeholders. We can do this in real time and we can bring those stakeholders together through Zoom or through a chat function or a SharePoint drive. There's all kinds of ways that we can analyze data collectively and drive this paradigm forward at a much faster pace. Our patients demand it. Our society needs answers a lot quicker than we're able to bring them to bear. And the place to start is in the cirrhotic population because that's the biggest need.
Jörn Schattenberg.
Roger, just to follow up on that, it's not the societies that are slow, it's the quality of the evidence that has to be right to make a recommendation. And the field, really the NASH field, has been exceptionally in putting together big research consortia. It might be the Summit NASH Research Network, it could be the European FLD registry or the US registries. They're generating data that hasn't been seen before in other fields, and the momentum here is really tremendous, and the quality of the data is better. We could not do recommendations based on a retrospective single center trial, but we can do now that we have these registries and we're moving really at a speed that in hepatology hasn't been there for quite some time.
So that would argue that the issue becomes how to get the people that have resources, connections, and latchkeys that aren't intrinsic to the researchers yourselves to be excited enough about this to move on it.
Look, first of all, we're very honored to have Jörn with us today, but he's incredibly busy in Germany seeing patients and doing his own research. And then he has a family and there's a work-life balance that has to take place. So at the end of the day, there's only so many hours. It's a matter of finding the energy to really take that next step and pull all this together. That's been the challenge. It's not that people don't have the interest in it. It's just really somebody taking the initiative and pulling it all together. And at the end of the day, you're going to look back whenever it's done and you're going to say, wow, that really wasn't that hard. Why didn't I think of that? And it's like anything else in innovative science. It's easy to look backwards. Hindsight's 20/20, but it's really pulling that together at this point and taking the bull by the horns and making that happen and finding the time to do that has been the challenge.
So here's my challenge to us then. What can a humble podcast do to get people together in a place where enough of them from different parts of the spectrum get activated together that somebody who has maybe a little more time or a little more resourcing or whatever can be that activator? Stephen, what I hear you saying is there's passion, there's interest, there's data. Everybody who's got it is exceptionally busy and pulled in multiple directions at once, which kind of actually goes back to the Mike Chart and Larry Kramer question. Who's going to be the person who makes this the one thing they do in their life and pull it together and yell and stomp and cajole? That person hasn't been identified yet or hasn't emerged yet.
Everybody has the same goal in mind, and that is, let's get therapy into the hands of physicians that can make a difference for these people with liver disease. Whether it's NASH cirrhosis or NASH with advanced disease or fatty liver by itself, we all want to get the right therapy into these patients to make them better. It's really just how can we do it where we're not spinning our wheels? If I'm going to spend 5 hours thinking about how to pull this together, who are the right people to pull together, and what format do we do that in, and then who's going to fund that effort? All those are important ideological questions that need answers before theoretically that all happens. Our podcast is built to generate those types of questions and generate enthusiasm to get the ball rolling and to begin to coalesce a group of people that can begin to address this particular situation. We made the first step today by having a nice dialogue about it.
Totally agree. And I think this has been great. And we should all put our heads together and figure out, we do the same thing every week, but we don't have to, right? We could pull together a large group of people for 2 or 3 hours, excerpt the conversation out in pieces.
I bet you Louise has the answer before our next podcast. I'm placing my bets right now. She is going to come up with the way, and we're going to look back and say, oh yeah, that was so easy. Oh, that was just,
Louise Campbell.
Well, I suppose you could do it here. We can put a call out to all contact Surfing the NASH Tsunami if you want to be part of that episode and recording to be able to do that. So let's put all of the minds together on the podcast and have that dialogue. Because Donna is having that dialogue, obviously, with the International Liver Federation, the WHO are now more involved. So there is movement. But it would be an interesting concept to have Surfing the NASH Tsunami host one of those meetings to see who was available, who wanted to be part of that. Stephen said it. You need to be passionate. We're here. We give our time. We do this because we're passionate to try and make a difference. And Stephen's trying to get his Nobel Prize, and they is really passionate.
Well, and Louise, this is what it comes from. Jörn might join him,
Absolutely.
This might be the genesis of all that today.
I retired. Roger's, Stephen's retired once, and you're old. No, but we do this because we're passionate about a disease that kills people young. Stephen's right. We do have to follow some of the lines from Hepatitis C. They pulled national teams together. They do it from a national level rather than people being prescriptive locally. And there's so much we can learn from other areas and other diseases as well as our own liver specialities, taking that strength. But put the call out, Roger.
I know we're over, and I don't want to keep Jörn up any later than he has to be here. He's just been tremendous to be on with us. And Louise, it's only 1 hour earlier at your place than Jörn's place. So the cat's looking at you going, come on, Mom, let's get off the phone. But I think another thing that I just thought about that maybe Jörn and I and a couple others can work on is maybe just putting out an editorial on a call to action to make this happen quicker. Sometimes those editorials are powerful. Some of the best publications actually are editorials written that are meant to just be paradigm changers. Maybe that's what we do.
So Louise and I will put out a call to action through the podcast to find out where all the agitators are. You will agitate the agitated, but not necessarily as active as they'd like to be through a paradigm shifting paper. I think we got a couple things to do.
Back to the who's got the time to make it happen. That's
why it goes back to Larry Kramer. Somebody has to be that passionate about it that they're willing and have the energy, right? I mean, part of the problem is that most of the patient advocates who become patient advocates because they have cirrhosis tend to be a little later along in life.
Yeah, and in the words of my old mentor, it was amazing, Bruce Bacon, he'll say the best time to write is between midnight and 4 in the morning. You're never going to be bothered.
As long as you can be awake, I'm right there with him. In fact, that's when I like that. I like that thought. All right, with that, we've each got our tasks. We're about 10 minutes over. Jörn, thank you so much. Just in closing, the question becomes, what's the one thing we haven't mentioned that might start to tip towards more action?
Whilst we've said that it has to be the high profile, but I think the patients or people can still move this a big agenda. And if I was a parent of a child who's been diagnosed with fatty liver disease, I would be wanting to move that needle fairly quick. We need to look younger to start the momentum to change the future.
if I step out for a second outside of this group and listen to you guys, and I think this is really the people that want to change something and can make it happen. For all these people listening, this is where the momentum starts, and then others will gain speed and will join us in these efforts.
Amen. And we know the two things we've got to do, which is Louise and I are going to figure out how to be outside agitators, and you guys are going to figure out how to get a paradigm-shifting paper done within the profession, right?
I've always been an agitator.
And now, back to Roger.
We hope you've enjoyed this recording. If you have any questions or comments about the content of this conversation or the entire episode, please send an email to questions@surfingnash.com. We will be back next Wednesday, September 1st, with our guest Donna Cryer to explore how the Delta variant of COVID-19 will affect NASH treatment and clinical trials. It's always fun when Donna joins us to get the band back together. And this discussion has its roots in the very first days of our podcast. I hope you'll join us then. Until then, stay safe, surf on, see you on the podcast. Bye-bye now.